Hey everyone, Jim Coventry from RotoWire here with the reactions. Top five from week 13. I'll give you more than five. It's the way it is. Five's a nice number, though, isn't it? All right. Hopefully everybody's doing well in week 13. We still got Monday night action left. I already see we got a couple of good friends. Oh, there's my timer to remind me to do this show. Great. Anyway, I see some great people here again. I'm going to get those questions at the end of this. Let's just get right down to business. But remember, if you're on YouTube, please smash the like and subscribe button. I would appreciate it greatly. Can always get you 2 free days at RotoWire behind the paywall, rotowire.com/try. Don't even need a credit card. It's an email address. Love to have you part of the team. All right. Derrick Henry's the fourth straight game he's been 3.1 yards per carry or less, and it's something that I picked up a few weeks ago, and I'm sure others have picked it up as well, and I certainly have talked about it quite a bit. And what I talked about was the league this year is making interesting adjustments. Bill Belichick was the guy to make the weekly game plans very, very specific to the opponent. Teams that make general game plans, but really they were never to the level of really taking something away. I used to see that in the NFL playoffs years ago. I mean, my first experience that I remember that like really clearly was Priest Holmes was running back with Kansas City. I know at one point he was with Baltimore too, but Priest Holmes, then he was gone, and then Larry Johnson took over. And I remember they were playing the Colts in the playoffs, and the Colts were a horrible run defense, and Larry Johnson just came off this legendary season. And so obviously when these playoff contests for fantasy football, everybody was like, oh, jump on Larry Johnson because he's going to get you 35 points. And then he came out and he laid an egg. And I was like, wow, I didn't see that coming. And that's when I really started to realize that an NFL team, a lot of the time, if they make a conscious effort to take away one thing, they might give up everything else. But you could take away that one thing to a degree. Is it perfect? No. And again, if we knew all these answers, we'd win the Millie Maker every week, right? We have all the right answers, the answers to the test, and we have $3 million. But it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. But Derrick Henry, back to my point. 3.1 yards per carry, 4 straight games. Defenses have made this is a point I'm making. Long roundabout way. Sorry, usually more succinct than this. But anyway, what they're doing is teams that are one-dimensional. They're saying, all right, let's let that bad dimension beat us. We can live with that. But we're not going to let the good dimension run all over us. So we saw differing versions of Ryan Tannehill. Now, this week, it was never going to work for him because the problem was if the Eagles sold out to stop Henry, they still had James Bradbury. They still had Darius Slay. They have 2 outside corners who are excellent. So opposed to the Green Bay game, and yes, I know Jair Alexander is a good cornerback, but the whole Green Bay system is playing soft. So they were giving inside leverage, and Tannehill just ate them up all night long. Well, those Philly corners, they're not going to give you that. They're going to fight you. And so Tannehill didn't have those clean, easy looks. And so, again, based on the defense that deploys it, now, could a quarterback get hot? Yes. The combination where Tannehill ripped up against Green Bay was he had the looks that he was on. He was just really on. The non-elite quarterbacks, they're hit or miss. You know, it's like a pitcher in baseball. You know, not the aces that come out and they dominate every day. It's your number 2 and 3 starters. They'll have a couple good outings. They'll have a bad one. That's the nature of sports, right? So anyway, Derrick Henry, what do we expect for fantasy going forward? Well, so he's still getting receptions, which is good. He's getting some catches. The one week he had a 70-yard reception and he fumbled, but regardless. And then they had the week where he threw the touchdown pass against Green Bay. So Henry, for the most part, is finding some ways to get it done, but his ceiling is not nearly what it was. Instead of a guy who 6 weeks ago, we were looking at maybe from week 3 on, he could have been like the number 1 running back in fantasy. Now we're looking at a guy, all right, maybe he's a top 10-ish guy, and in those weeks he finds the end zone, he has more upside. But it is disconcerting for fantasy because the teams that can stack, they're going to follow that blueprint. And the league is and when you say copycat league, it's very true. More teams are being weekly game plan dependent. I think that's the main starting point for today. Let's get some shorter takes here. Najee Harris has now been productive in 3 straight games. They haven't been necessarily eye-popping. One of the games was a strong fantasy game, but he he is running for well over 4 yards per carry. And it was like 66% of the snaps yesterday. So it's not like the 90% he was seeing as a rookie, but nonetheless, he is playing very well as a runner right now. And we can probably assume the foot was an issue earlier in the year, because I don't think you go from being very poor as a runner and a producer to all of a sudden now you figured it out, because it's not like defenses are worried about Kenny Pickett, not at all. But it was George Pickens could get himself an upgraded quarterback, but not necessarily happening there. But anyway, so Najee Harris right now, basically he's not getting a lot of receptions, and the Steelers aren't scoring a lot of points. So we're not getting the touchdown opportunities we'd like. We're not getting the point per reception value we'd like. So I'd say right now, clear top 15 running back going forward. I don't know how much higher the ceiling is, but I don't think the floor is much lower, because Jalen Warren was basically relegated last week. It was, like I said, 66% of snaps for Harris, but he dominated the touches. And so that was a very good performance for him. Jalen Hurts. So what's interesting about Jalen Hurts, and this is probably more for the NFL playoffs than it is for much of anything else, but what the Eagles are able to do is defenses can't really take one thing away from them, because their offensive line is dominant. They can run on you. They can pass on you. Now, if they play let's say they're playing the 49ers, they might have some issues. But when they played Tennessee, the whole deal, and I talked about this, look, saying A.J. Brown's going to have a good game is no great shakes, but he hasn't had many of them this year. He had 2 really big games. He had 2 good games, but he's had a lot of clunkers, for a guy that's a wide receiver 1 type. But when going into this game, it was pretty easy to me that 8 out of 10 times if they play, Tennessee was going to stop the run. No matter how good the offensive line of Philly was, they were going to stop the run. And what would we do to circumvent it? Well, you go into that game, Tennessee's number 31 against wide receivers, and you have A.J. Brown and you have Devontae Smith. So you go in and you attack them through the air. The offensive line is going to hold up, because it's not like they have an elite pass rush. And so that was always the key. We called this when Philly played Pittsburgh a few weeks back, when A.J. Brown had the 3-touchdown game. It was the same deal. We see these matchups. They don't always work out, but at least we understand how to break them down, right? So Jalen Hurts, he really got it done. He had a big advantage cornerback receiver, and then he was able to just take those. There were a lot of easy pitch and catch for him. So it was like a tailor-made matchup. Now, the good news for Tennessee is if they make the playoffs, there aren't a lot of teams that can do things the way to them that Philadelphia did, that elite line. The dual ability run pass. So they're just a very unique team. I can't wait to see the Dallas-Philly rematch. That one could be a legendary one. Dallas had a huge injury loss. Anthony Brown, their second starting corner, tore an Achilles. Horrible loss for Dallas. Don't know how they're going to get that one figured. I mean, the passers are certainly going to help, but when they had corners and the ability to rush, that made them really dangerous. But again, Dallas is still a team that could take it very deep into the NFL playoffs. All right, next one, Mike White. We talked about this one on the weekend as well. Well, Mike White had a pristine matchup 2 weeks ago against the Bears. I said the Bears can't rush. The Bears can't cover. The Bears were now 2 players in the secondary. Mike White was in for a great game against the Bears. Against Minnesota, I had some concerns. Now, Minnesota secondary, not good, but they can bring heat. And Mike White was under some pressure, and we saw some of the problems. Yes, there was garbage time. They fell way behind, and Mike White put yardage up. He ran for a touchdown. He threw 2 picks, didn't throw a touchdown pass. They got down in the red zone a few times. But, it's the whole point was, I think when you compare Mike White to Zach Wilson, you're excited. But Mike White was a backup for a reason. Joe Flacco started for the season for a reason. Mike White, when he has a good match, he has weapons. They set up Zach Wilson for success, and so Mike White has that same setup. Garrett Wilson, they're starting a little bit more to integrate Elijah Moore, and they're foolish they don't integrate him more because he is a legitimate star-type player. Tyler Conklin's a good tight end. Corey Davis is okay. He's okay. And They have running backs they can dump the ball to. So there are a lot of tools in place. But Mike White, for those in fantasy, very, very matchup dependent. He's a quarterback too. And, we have a team that can really cover and rush a little bit, that offensive line in New York has been problematic. They had a lot of injuries. It's not a very good offensive line right now. Next year, they'll be good, but that doesn't help them right now. Jameson Williams made his NFL debut. He saw his first target. I was watching 8 games at a time when that was on, and I thought he had made a catch. And I don't know if that was one that there was a step out of bounds, or I don't know if there was a penalty, which there may have been. Thought he caught it, but apparently he didn't. Well, the box score, oops, I had written my article up. Oh, I saw the catch. Okay, great, he made a catch. It was just one target. It came late in the third quarter. It's like the very end of third quarter. He had his one target. But that's my point. I believe it was 11% snap share he played. And so I had mentioned, I'm very concerned for people getting excited this year about Jameson Williams for fantasy, because I fully believe they just want to integrate him in, get him comfortable, and then next training camp, start turning it loose. The Lions, look, there is a chance they can make the playoffs, right? But I think this is a team that's building something for the future. And Jameson Williams is, less than a year removed from his ACL injury. And for some guys, they're fine. A lot of guys, they need some recovery time. But I think the 11% snap share and the one target, that's going to go up a bit. If you see before the fantasy playoffs, which is like a couple weeks away, but if you see all of a sudden getting 40% of the snaps and getting 3 or 4 targets, well, now you might consider him a little bit. But right now, he's a real deep dart throw flex option, hope and pray, because if you're not getting snaps, you're not getting targets, and you're not getting fantasy points. A.J. Dillon, so people will box score hunt and say, yeah, he finally got back. He outdid Aaron Jones. And not so fast. Aaron Jones had a shin injury. He was in and out of the game in the first half. It was already clear that Jones was going to be set up in a feature role in this game as a receiver and a runner. And then in the second half, Jones spent significant portions of time on the bench, so the snap share was strongly in favor of A.J. Dillon. It didn't look to be a major injury, and with Green Bay on a Week 14 bye, my guess is it goes back to where it was, whereas Jones had recently been seeing 70% of the snap share. They had gotten that high in the last few weeks, so I assume he goes back to that. But for what it's worth, that bye week is big, though. And for those that need Packers players, there's 6 teams on bye in Week 14. That's going to be a tough one for people fighting for their fantasy playoffs lives. And then Tua Tagovailoa, let's finish up with him. We can talk some injuries, too. We can probably talk some injuries after that. I was nervous about Tua, and you've heard me say this. I think he's very, very sensitive to pressure. He was skittish that entire game. Now, they had a great design play early. My bold call for the game was he went, it was like under 200 yards and 1 touchdown, but they had a 75-yard play like on the first drive of the game. Total design up Trent Sherfield. Nobody was looking for it. It was a great play, perfect call. They got a 75-yard touchdown from Trent Sherfield. They'll never see that again. And those are the numbers that put Tua over that. Otherwise, it was just the way I said it would be, because I knew both offensive tackles were out. Nick Bosa was going to create havoc. And the problem was Tua was anticipating pressure, and that's not good. You could see his footwork. He was very choppy. You could see some of the throws, open receivers, airmailing some, underthrowing others. He looked very, very skittish. And that is going to be the problem right now. Tua has limitations. When the offense faces an opponent that can't expose those limitations, Tua can be amazing. We've seen crazy good production against some teams before. But right now, and I don't know if he'll progress beyond that. He's a young quarterback. Young quarterbacks learn. We never close the book on anybody early. But this was almost the worst nightmare for Miami fans, because if you get a pass rush, those deep routes to Jalen Waddle, more importantly to Tyreek Hill, and Tua was getting those balls off quickly, but if the rush is coming very, very quickly, those aren't developing. And that's a big problem for this Miami offense that is relying on that. And I don't know what happened in the backfield. Jeff Wilson, I know last week, I guess he left the game for a few snaps. He came back. They said it was maybe cramping, or then somebody said it was a calf. Don't know what it was. But Now, after him dominating like touches and way outplaying Mostert played the majority of the snaps. Wilson, neither of them did much, but Wilson did nothing yesterday. So that's going to be one to monitor for fantasy lineups in week 14. Not sure what Jeff Wilson's role on the team right now is. In my opinion, he did nothing to jeopardize his role. Against Houston, he didn't play well, but really, I know they scored 30 points early, but that whole team didn't show up for that game. They got the 30 points because Houston was so bad, they didn't show up. All right, a couple injuries. Lamar Jackson recently heard he is not likely to play this week, and it could be a little bit. He has a knee injury. John Harbaugh is going to be very coy with this as much as he can. One thing I'll tell you to remember, and it didn't happen yesterday, Mark Andrews had one catch for 1 yard, but Tyler Huntley last year, he can't deal with pressure. He gets the ball out super quick. Now, they had a game plan, and they probably didn't change it because of the injury, but the Tyler Huntley game plan is get the ball out super quick. Now, if defenses know that and react to it, that's fine, but Mark Andrews was on a 1,300-yard pace in the games he played with Tyler Huntley last year. He was way more productive with Huntley than he was with Lamar Jackson. Something to file away. Don't know if that happens again, but that was where it went last year. Kenneth Walker had an ankle injury. He had a really good long run, and then they were trying to put a pad in his shoe, work on his foot, and he couldn't play. He didn't show up, and that's concerning because usually like if it's a low ankle sprain or something, which it may be, but no like a basketball roll, you're good. You shake it off, you get back out there, your adrenaline, you play through it that day. But they pretty quickly seem to go away from him. So I don't know if it's serious or not, but that could be really problematic for the Seahawks. There's no Ken Walker. Travis Homer missed that game with an illness. DJ Dallas, now Pete Carroll in his wonderful clouded speech said that Dallas has a high ankle issue, but he didn't elaborate on it. But Travis Homer could be your sneaky waiver wire ad because he may just be forced into a bunch of work. He can catch. He's a decent receiver, and he has some ability to run. So, I mean, it would be, obviously we always need running backs, right? And then Treylon Burks made a great touchdown catch. He got knocked out on the play. Poor dude. And obviously he was out and knocked out of the game on his touchdown catch. So hopefully he recovers well, gets back. Jimmy Garoppolo breaks his foot. Don't know what that's going to do for the 49ers offense. I mean, wow, we're going to laugh, right? But the Carolina Panthers apparently are releasing Baker Mayfield. I don't think they can go Brock Purdy. Purdy was okay yesterday stepping in, but he doesn't have an NFL arm, right? If Kyle Shanahan could really manage things and control things for Baker Mayfield, sorry about that. Can he get something out of him? I think so. It's run after the catch stuff. It's all this quick hit and design stuff. So I think Mayfield can run that offense. I think he can. And if the coach, again, just really manages him, I think he can do it. I think they can't go with Brock Purdy. I mean, they are a legit Super Bowl win. It wouldn't be funny if Baker Mayfield won a Super Bowl this year. Wouldn't it be the funniest thing ever? It wouldn't be because of him, but it'd be funny if he did. Hayden Hurst hurt his calf, not expected to play this upcoming week. He was like, that borderline starting tight end, but nonetheless, Wilcox took over a bit in that game. Drew Sample was the receiving tight end last year. I don't know who would be in the future. All right, let's get some questions here. All right, let's see what we got here. MSA, you got good afternoon to you as well. So, thoughts on the game. Oh, and by the way, everybody's on Twitter, on YouTube. Smash the like and subscribe button. I'd appreciate that greatly. Thank you, and thank you for being with us today. All right. So, something game. Brady 270, Dalton 214. So, Dalton, it's really predicated on how they use Kamara. They have not used him well. There were first couple games of Dalton, he was seeing 9 and 10 targets, and they were really working well. And then we had 3 games where they really needed him. The Ravens, the Steelers, can't remember the third matchup. They only threw him the ball like 4 and 5 times. It was like criminal because that's what they need to unlock their offense, and they weren't going that. Now, last week he got 7 targets, which is a little better. And that's what they really need to do here. They need to get him involved as a receiver. And that's where the trick on Dalton's yardage is at. If you're going to throw to Kamara always has the chance to break a big play and then make things move. Chris Olave has done well on isolated plays against very good corners. That one long touchdown he had against the Rams, Jalen Ramsey was in. There were two defenders. Jalen Ramsey was one of them. So he can make those plays. I don't know how consistently he makes them against good corners. Well, in this game, we got Jamel Dean and Carlton Davis. They're two very, very good corners. Now, the pressure rate for the Buccaneers isn't exactly what we'd like. They're near the bottom of the league this year. That hasn't been good. And the injury to Shaq Barrett has been crippling to a degree. He wasn't having a great year, but certainly losing a rusher of that caliber is problematic. But those corners are good. And Todd Bowles is probably going to dial up some blitzes on Andy Dalton. I would imagine that, you're going to blitz it up a little bit. You're going to try to make him uncomfortable. Tampa's at home. So I would be inclined to say that Dalton goes under here. He doesn't really have a lot of targets. And, these teams are very familiar with each other. And I think obviously the Bucs understand the importance of Kamara on the offense, and they would probably limit resources to making sure they slowed him a bit. I just don't know that Dalton has, and there's a lower scoring game. I think the Bucs haven't been scoring points, and the Bucs are stubbornly running the ball on early downs when they can. And if they do that here, they're screwed. They're going to be in third and long and second long all day long. And the Saints, the Saints are weird. They got a bottom 7 or a bottom 8 pressure rate, but it seems like when they have to dial up pressure, they're always able to do it. And they're getting healthier on defense. Now, I don't know if Marshawn Lattimore is playing. That's always a tough matchup for Mike Evans when he does. But if he doesn't, that helps. But last week, Brady and Evans, they were like, I'm guessing, these were like 200 air yards, and they weren't connecting at all. Godwin's been fine, but it's in the slot. They're not explosive plays, but they're piling up. But I just think this is a low-scoring game. I mean, I could see this game being as low-scoring as 19-13, and that I could easily see that. And so in that game, I think we're looking under. Now, see, here's the thing with Godwin. Now Brady's yardage is 270. That's a much higher number. So if Godwin's going to get his 80, 90 yards, and where are the other yards going to come from, right? Especially if he's not connecting with Mike Evans. If Lattimore's in, and you'll know that an hour and a half before game time. If Lattimore's in, I'm a definite under on that. But I still think it's reasonable to the under for Brady, even if Lattimore plays, because, again, Brady is just not humming it along with him right now, And next question here. Man, thank you so much. Appreciate you very much. And so, see, and Evans is the same deal, right? Check 90 minutes before kickoff. Check the inactive. You go to RotoWire. The news is free over there. You go to the RotoWire homepage, NFL, and check the news. And if Lattimore plays, it's a real bad matchup for Evans. Evans has always had problems with him. Occasionally, he'll get a little bit of them. In the playoff game, I know they had once. He did get a little bit up on him, but that's not, the way Brady's playing this year, I don't see that happening. But if Lattimore's out, Evans is, because last week he should have sailed over his number with all the air yards he had, but it just wasn't happening. But I would think that if Lattimore's out, Evans goes over. Godwin's getting double-digit targets, and I don't see that changing here. Brady loves the middle of the field. He always has, right? I think there's a good spot for Godwin to get 8 catches, so I would be fairly confident of the over on that. The receiving yards, that's right at the number. That's right at the number. I would be inclined to say a little bit over on that. If he's going to get his 8 catches, one of those should get him into the 20-something yard range, which would be enough to get the rest of his catches over that. So I'm more likely than not that he goes over that. And then now to Jimmy G here. See, we would like to win $1 million. I know DFS is so difficult. You can know everything about a game and then they play it, right? And there's so many variables. It's always so difficult. And knowing all of that, I think I know about football, which might be a little, might be a lot, but I can tell you a lot how these game scripts go, but the weirdest things happened. It's just crazy. All right, now that Jimmy G's out for, well, I mean, yes, because even if they got through the NFC, I don't think they could get through a Super Bowl with a backup quarterback. I don't think they could. I mean, all right, here's the caveat. If the defense goes on, I call it a bender. Some of these great defenses, they just get on fire for a 4-game run. And if they do that, screens to Christian McCaffrey, screens to Deebo Samuel, they've got weapons. I think their Super Bowl chances are very, very significantly decreased. but it's going to be really hard to rule them out. I honestly mentioned Baker. I honestly think that if Shanahan was able just to give a real limited menu to Baker and force him in that comfort zone, that he could do enough with that to move the offense. Jimmy G's a limited quarterback. I don't know. Good question. Kamara. So Warren Sharp pointed out, and I kind of disagreed at first. I know Akeem Hicks was a great defender in his career. I know that. And when Hicks was out, teams were running a lot on Tampa, and then Hicks came back, and all of a sudden teams weren't running on him. I don't think Hicks at the point of his career where he's that level of difference maker anymore. I think it was more about some teams they played, some approaches, but the Bucs have been better against the run the last few games. And so that number of 48 looks like a trap too, right? Because it's like, well, Kamara's got to go over that. But there's still that stigma about the Bucs run defense that I think is a stigma. I don't think it's necessarily a true one. So again, the problem with unders is you break a 25-yard run, which we saw 2 weeks ago. We saw Latavius Murray break a 52-yard run. Defense forgot about him. And then boom, if they played this game 10 times, I think 7 of them, Kamara's going under. Now the receptions, I pointed out earlier, in 4 of the last 5 games, he's had 4 or 5 targets. Last week he had 7. So if he gets 7 targets, he's going over. But the recent trend has been he's not getting enough targets. But I'm thinking this through and saying, we need to fix this. And that's why I'm not comfortable on the Kamara receptions, because I don't know what the coaching staff's going to do. Kamara as a receiver is the best weapon they have. And I love Chris Olave, but Kamara is their best weapon as a receiver. And I don't know what the coaching staff's going to do that. So I would lay off that. The rushing, I said, more probable than not that it goes under. All right, everybody. Thanks for your time. Thanks for joining me. I will not be around on Tuesday. I will be back around on Wednesday. I'm missing a Tuesday this week. But talk to everybody soon and have a great day. And if you didn't hit the like button on YouTube, I would appreciate it very much if you did. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.